Hello everyone and welcome back to Naked Security on Facebook Live. I'm Anna, this is Mark
Hi.
and Matt.
Hi.
As always, say hi or leave your comments or questions in the comments box and we will answer them either now or later. So guys, today you've released some research into RDP brute forcing. Surely everyone's protected against that, aren't they?
Well, you would hope so, because it's not a new thing, RDP brute forcing, but actually no, lots of people aren't protected against it. And that's a real problem, and it's become a huge problem just over the last couple of years because brute forcing RDP has become strongly linked with targeted ransomware, which is the ransomware attacks where somebody breaks into your network, has a good look around, and then sort of figures out what the worst way to attack you is, or the best way to attack you with the worst consequences for you, and then just sort of riddles your organisation with ransomware, and those are the attacks that lead to 5-figure, 6-figure ransoms.
Okay.
So it's a massive problem.
And so Matt, do you want to talk us through your research, what you did?
Yeah, so we set up 10 Windows servers in 10 different countries throughout the world. And these were completely anonymous. So it was as if they were just any old server in any old business. We didn't buy a website domain and associate it with the device. I've never called it a website domain before. That was a first for me.
We were going to let that ride.
Yeah,
enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there we go. So we didn't buy any sort of domain and associate that with the device. We just paid for these devices in AWS, spun them up, and saw how many login attempts started to occur on the devices. We logged that all back to a back-end database from these 10 different countries, and then we started to correlate and understand how many attempts the average business and the average person will be getting if they enable RDP and allow people to log onto it from anywhere.
So if I just add to that, we weren't looking at what they did if they broke in. We were looking at how hard do they try to break in.
Yep.
And if the servers were set up so they couldn't succeed, and we wanted to know, well, what does it look like if they don't succeed? Do they keep going? How many more people join in? How many password requests do they make?
Yep.
Just to see what sort of persistence people would exhibit.
And what did you find?
What did we find? We found there were many different techniques that the people were using, or probably the automated script were using to try and get into our devices. And this kind of shows to us that there are many people that are trying to kind of knock on the door of your servers, knock on the door of your devices on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, and a minute-by-minute basis, in fact. So we kind of worked out that overall there were about 10 attacks per minute. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, 10 attacks per minute per server.
Right, okay.
So it's 4.3 million login attempts across the 10 honeypots over 30 days, which is about 10 a minute.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, if you look at the rate at which the attacks come in, obviously somebody is the first attacker to find you, and the first honeypot to be found, it was found in I think 1 minute 24 seconds. So a server that nobody knew existed gets put onto the internet, 1 minute 24 seconds later somebody's trying to break in. And then obviously other attackers find other honeypots. So the last one to be discovered, I think, was discovered after 15 hours, something like that. And then more people discover you as time rolls on. So the number of attacks and the number of attackers increases through the 30 days.
Yeah, so
sorry, I interrupted you.
That's all right.
What so you categorised it into 3 different types of attacks. Do you two want to tell us about the first one?
Yeah, so let's kind of combine them really, because I think it's the attack types. There were 3 different attack types that we were able to pluck out of all of this research. If you want to learn more about them, you can go to the article, which is at sophos.com/RDP, and read about it. But the 3 attack types were 3 of many. These were 3 attack types from 3 different IP addresses coming in, and these were the most prolific attack types. We called them the RAM, based on its kind of brute forcing nature. We called the other the hedgehog, based on the way in which it looked in a time-based graph, and the next one we called why is my mind got blank? The swarm, because the way they sort of swarmed around your server and used lots of different usernames. So those are 3 techniques that we found out of the research, but there were definitely lots and lots more that were being used to try and log onto our devices. But they're just the 3 that we have.
I think, I mean, the story is there are lots of people listening to this and lots of people out there who know that exposing RDP on the internet is a problem, and that if you expose RDP, people are going to try and break in. And it's one of those, it should be a solved problem, but it isn't, because it relies, if all you've got protecting your Windows server is a username and password, then it relies on all of your users having strong passwords, and we know what a problem that is. And the crooks know what a problem that is as well, and this is a very successful method of exploitation for them. This is a great way to get into networks, and if they can successfully compromise an RDP server, they can either use that themselves or they can go and sell it to someone else. So there are marketplaces on the dark web where you can just go and buy compromised RDP servers. So I can compromise an RDP server and then sell it to you, and then you can break in, and then maybe I can sell it to someone else and they can break in. So what's happening is your RDP servers is not an orderly line of people queuing up one after the other to try and break in. You've got this swarm of people all trying these different techniques all at the same time. And as Matt said, I mean, we pulled out 3, which were the people who were trying hardest, where we could pinpoint individual attackers. But actually there's a sort of vast mess of people who are just opportunists who are turning up. They may be trying one username, normally administrator, and they maybe try 9 passwords, and then they move on, presumably to one of the other millions of RDP servers. So we reckon there's about, conservatively, there's 3 or 4 million exposed RDP servers. So there's a lot of targets out there. And then the attacks that we've highlighted are just more sophisticated, and they show the different ways that attackers are marshalling their resources, because frankly they've got an abundance of targets, millions to choose from. They've got an abundance of usernames to choose from. So most attacks use the administrator username, but after that it's kind of a free-for-all as to what's the optimal username. So different attackers have got different strategies, and then they've got how many password guesses are they prepared to make, and at what rate are they going to make those password guesses. And different attackers are balancing different ones of those. So some attackers are trying really hard to get an administrator password, and they'll try thousands and thousands of passwords, and other attackers know that actually a very short list of passwords is good enough to get you into a lot of machines, so they prioritise attacking lots of machines instead.
We've had a couple of hellos. Mark has said good day.
Hi.
Good day.
Matthew said thanks for doing this presentation.
I did, Another Matthew.
Another Matthew.
There are more.
There are more.
And we've also and there's also Matty has said So what is your theory on how they found the honeypot? So you've sort of covered that.
That's interesting. Have we covered that? Did we talk about Shodan?
Oh no.
So we try to look into whether Shodan had an impact on how quickly the honeypots were discovered. Now Shodan, if you haven't heard of it, if you go to shodan.io, you'll find their website and find that search engine. But it's basically a service that can be used to discover websites and the possible vulnerabilities they may have, servers and the possible vulnerabilities they may have, and just look at a network and see what ports, what services that network currently has open. So you may be able to point it at your home IP address and see that your D-Link router or any other brand, insert name of other brand here, currently is, you can log into it from outside of your network, which you didn't realise was possible. But what we did was we hooked in with the Shodan APIs during the course of this research to see if the impact of Shodan was huge. If suddenly when the servers appeared on Shodan, on the search engine, will the hackers be using that API just like we were to then say, right, let's now target all of our efforts at this RDP server that we've suddenly just discovered through this service. But actually, it kind of showed us that there may not be an impact by it, because we were receiving login attempts, like Mark said, in just over a minute, and all of our servers never appeared on Shodan during that 1 month period. So Shodan was actually really slow to pick up on the fact that these servers were online.
Yeah.
So people might not realise, but you can scan the internet in about 30 minutes.
Okay.
So there are tools. So you have to imagine that the internet is a bunch of computers. They all got IP addresses in a specific range, and you can enumerate through those addresses. And there are scanning tools that are optimised for speed, and they can run through all of those IP addresses and find out all the computers that are plugged into the internet in about 30 minutes. So if you imagine, if you come armed with one of those, and then you just systematically work through them and go, well, has this IP address got RDP exposed?
Yeah.
Has this IP address got RDP exposed? Like that.
Yeah.
So there's two things I think could have happened here. The first one is that 1 minute 24 seconds just got unlucky, that it just happened to be switched on at the point where one of those presumably many people doing a scan like that happened to have that IP address come up first.
Yeah.
And the other is because it was an Amazon server, it's possible that the IP, although the IP address was being reused in this honeypot, that it may have existed in a previous life, and so it may be on someone's list for that reason. But I think that the thing that's most meaningful to me is not the 1 minute 24 seconds is alarming, but it's not like if you're a sysadmin that 1 minute 24 seconds and 15 hours are really any different. Because if you're connecting a computer to the internet for RDP, then that's so that someone can log in, either an administrator logging into a server or a home user logging in to use a remote desktop. You're normally going to want that to be up for weeks or months or even years. So there's effectively no difference. There's certainly no reliable difference. So I guess the takeaway from that is when you put an RDP server on the internet, it's got to be ready to go. You've got to be, it has to be at your, whatever you think the most secure configuration is, at the point where you switch it on, because you haven't got any leeway. Yeah.
Another thing that I'd like to mention about that 1 minute and 24 seconds and all of the timings that we're mentioning in this report, that is the time from the moment that we clicked start on Amazon Web Services to the point of that first login attempt. So that includes the time it took for the server to set itself up in AWS.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So actually 1 minute and 24 seconds, it may not have been available for login attempts prior to that 1 minute. 1 minute possibly.
Wow. We've had another question. So Ian has said, it seems to me that within the last few years there have been more RCEs in Windows services than usual, specifically in RDP, SMB and most recently DHCP servers. Is that just my perception or is there an uptick?
Speaking as somebody who lived through the sort of disaster of kind of 98 to 2002 period before the...
You're not old enough.
The Microsoft... before the Microsoft Secure Computing revolution. I think that probably is a matter of perception. I mean, I can remember when it was really bad with all the vulnerabilities in Internet Explorer and Internet Information Services before security was really taken properly seriously. And I don't think it's anything like as bad as that. And it's worth bearing in mind that this has got nothing to do with vulnerabilities. This is if you've got a RDP setup that's patched against Bluekey, there will be a whole ton of people all trying to guess the passwords on those RDP servers. So this is about a secure, in terms of vulnerabilities, a secure RDP setup is still going to be subject to this continuous barrage of password guessing attacks. Because doing vulnerabilities is hard, So take Bluekeep as an example. Everybody is rightly worried about Bluekeep. You should be worried about Bluekeep. Bluekeep's a big deal. Okay? So you need to patch against it. But this was happening before. And it's happening now while everyone's patching. And when everyone's patched, this will still be going on. So it's an entirely different kind of concern.
So what is your advice for people with RDP servers?
Turn it off if you can.
Okay.
Don't use RDP unless you absolutely need it. If you do really need to access that remote desktop session outside of the office or wherever in the world that you happen to be going, then the ways that we recommend doing it is by using a VPN, if you possibly can, and using two-factor authentication on that VPN, because otherwise it's just another protocol with just a password protecting it, waiting to be hacked into. And if you don't want to use a VPN as well, then there is also Microsoft Remote Desktop Gateway that you can use, which you can apply two-factor authentication to as well, which is basically the same.
I think it's a means of getting two-factor authentication.
Yeah, it's a means of getting two-factor authentication into your remote desktops.
So the biggest bang for your buck that you can get from is with, as we say on so many in so many situations, two-factor authentication. Because if you've got a bad password. And if you're an administrator, there's a limit to how much you can control the strength of people's passwords. But if everybody's also using two-factor authentication, then you've got that kind of extra reassurance. It's much, much harder then to break in. However, that doesn't give you any help at all against things like Bluekeep. Okay, so in the case of Bluekeep, we were lucky in that we found out about it before the crooks figured out how to exploit it.
Yeah.
And it turns out actually there's been quite a large window. So I think it's like 2 months and counting now. But there's no guarantee that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been that some criminal somewhere discovered that vulnerability before Microsoft did. And if that had been the case, then they could have wormed their way around the globe using RDP.
Yeah.
So two-factor authentication is great for password guessing, but we reckon get your RDP server off the internet entirely, either by switching it off or sticking it behind a VPN, because then you're covered against vulnerabilities and password guessing.
Great. Do you have anything to add, or is that it?
I think go and read the research, sophos.com/RDP.
Yep. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
See ya.
Bye-bye.